Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. We are with you today for our third video in CICS's discussion series. Once again, I am one of your co-hosts, Zach Day, and we have another great guest on our show who's been doing great work as a provider for CICS and has also recently put out a blog for our website. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Audrey to introduce Nick.
Great, thanks, Zach. Again, my name is Audrey, for those who may have not watched some of the earlier videos, and I am very excited to introduce Nick Mediate today. He has a great blog out there, so please take the time to read it and see what it's all about, but I will pass it off to Nick to give a little bit of intro about himself, and then we can get started.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, guys. Very flattering to be here. Thanks for the invite. But my name is Nicholas Mediate. I'm a psychotherapist here at CICS. I primarily work with young children who struggle with video game and screen addiction. It's been the number one problem that I've seen parents come in with, where they come in and they're like, hey, my child can't get off the iPad, or they're playing Minecraft all day. It's something that I hear time and time again, and that's what I primarily work with.
All right, well, thank you, Nick, and thank you again for joining us. So as I mentioned, Nick does have a new blog out on our website titled Technology at Home, How to Keep You and Your Family Sane in the Era of Screens and Viruses. So as you can guess, it's all about the always important topic of excessive screen usage, especially for your children, and what you can do when it seems like you can't pry them away from their devices. So Nick, do you mind giving a little bit more info on the blog piece?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just as you said, Zach. It's the number one problem that parents have when they come to me is, how do I get my kid off the iPad, stop playing games all day, to get them outside conversing with other people. And they struggle with it because they also maybe have struggles with their own technology use, where they're like, well, I use my phone all day, maybe it's okay if my kid uses their phone all day. They see other people using their screens and technology, and it's become such a big part of our lives that it becomes hard to set boundaries around it, and parents have a very difficult time figuring out where that fine line is. So I just laid out a foundation that they can use and offer some actionable advice that they can use with their kids, so hopefully they can get the results they want to see in terms of their screen use.
Awesome. And before we get into the question portion of our video, I just want to mention that, like past videos, the link to Nick's blog will be included in the description. I highly recommend checking it out if you have problems with your children using electronics in the home or in every aspect of their life. So Nick, the first question I have is, video game and screen addiction obviously is a unique type of addiction. Could you provide some insights on similarities that may exist between this sort of addiction and other forms of more traditional substance addiction, if there are any?
Yeah, I think the one major intersecting point between like a process addiction or a behavioral addiction, like a video game uses, and something like substance use, is the use of it as an escape for many addicts. And also, from what it seems from my experience and the experience of other clinicians, individuals who come in with problematic video game and screen use, where they're seeing an escape from some sort of pain or discomfort from their lives. But I think there is ultimately where the similarities end. I think video game addiction and classical substance use are very, very different. And a lot of organizations and companies that have substance use centers use same models to treating video game addiction. Usually they'll have like screen and technology use programs in addition to their substance use programs. And it's not 100% clear that that's actually correct. And there's a lot of differences between video game addiction and substance use. So for example, video games have multiple different aspects going on with them. So first off would be the social piece. So we think back to like the early 90s. What is the one thing that probably every kid and teenager would want in their rooms? A phone. And what does the phone do? The phone allows you to call people, right? We didn't have texting and cell phones in the early 90s, and that was the number one way to connect with people. Well, for a lot of kids, the number one way to connect with people is to hop on Xbox Live or PlayStation, or to get on their PC and hop on Discord and get in a call with their buddies and play Call of Duty or Apex Legends or something like that. And that's how they're getting a lot of their social interaction, especially for the past year and a half. We've all been stuck at home. We can't go outside and do anything. So in addition to just playing the actual game, which in and of itself is fun, but the game also becomes a vehicle for the social interaction that they're getting. The second part about it is more connected to social media. And a lot of research has been done on a psychological phenomenon called the fear of missing out, which is when you get this kind of anxiety about other things that other people are doing that you're missing out on. And I've seen this applied to video games as well, where a lot of times a lot of these kids are watching content creators on Twitch or on YouTube who have millions of subscribers, and they're able to get all of these cosmetics and cool items that they have to pay real world money for. And oftentimes you can get these through just not paying any money through in-game playtime. But for an average 12-year-old who doesn't have a credit card or a bank account, it's going to take them a lot longer to get those things. And so they're incentivized for play for long and long hours of time in order to get these really rare items that sometimes maybe their friends have and they see their content creators have, or getting paid to play these games and have the means to afford these things. And so they get that pull to play the games. And in addition, the monetization structures that games have, including loot boxes and battle passes, which we can get into if you guys want, also further incentivize the behavior patterns that influence long periods of play for an unhealthy amount of time.
All right, thank you. And yeah, when people tend to think of really any addiction, they tend to clump it into the same type of characteristics, same types of factors. But when it comes to this video game and screen addiction, there's really so many other factors going on with it that make it a really unique issue. So I'm gonna pass it off to Audrey, who has another question for you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick, for that. As I'm sure a lot of parents are familiar with, including myself, trying to get a child to limit their use of electronics can definitely be met with a lot of pushback. Aside from the use of parental controls on devices, which we could dive into in your article, when someone reads it, what other actions would you suggest to parents to try to get buy-in from their child to limit their screen time?
Yeah, I think we can separate this into two categories, because I think the answer to this question is very dependent on the age group that your child falls into. So I would say if your child is under the age of 11, then maybe you don't even need the buy-in to make changes. I mean, after all, like, you are the parent and you have the ability to set boundaries and create the rule and the rules in your house. And when your child is that young, the connection that they maybe have to games or the people that they're playing with online may not be as strong as if they were older. So you can just say, hey, this is what we're going to do in the house. You can also make it like a family thing. Children tend to learn best if parents are able to model for them. So it also helps if the parents can get it on it where they're saying, hey, we're going to take a little sabbatical from games. Maybe we have a set time per day that we're allowed to play, or there's a set time at night where everyone puts their phone in the basket and we turn all the electronics off. It'd be much more powerful to do it that way. But I would say for younger kids, it's best if parents can take the lead and model for their kids and just set the boundary, because it's more easy to make those changes that way when the kids are young. If your child's maybe say 13 or older and they're a teenager, that's when it gets a little bit more tricky, because it might actually be harmful in some instances to just outright set boundaries and take games away from kids because of the connections that they made online. I think there's a lot of research and anecdotes that show that the relationships that kids and individuals can make online are as deep and fulfilling as ones they're making in the real world. At least, and at the very least, it seems that way to kids. So I think in that case, having more of a dialogue with your teenager, finding out what they're getting out of playing the game. If you can find what they're getting out of playing with the game, then you can more easily find a substitute. So for instance, maybe they play Minecraft because they're really creative and they like to build and create things. So maybe enrolling them in some type of art class where they can sort of scratch that itch. And then the impetus to play the game is less, and they're playing less of Minecraft and they're doing more, let's say, pottery. So that way we're not taking them and forcing them out of the game. We're just nudging them towards something else that might be a little bit more productive and healthier. Or maybe they play Apex Legends and they're really competitive and they want to win. So maybe enrolling them in something like martial arts or jiu-jitsu where they can compete against other people and there's a hierarchy where they can measure themselves against. And again, you're just not so much forcing them or taking them away from the game, but you're pushing them towards something else that scratches that same itch for them. So for teens, I think having more of a dialogue, and then when you have kids, you can probably take more of an authoritative stance and set the boundary that way. But in either case, it's always best for parents to model the behavior that they want to see in kids, because kids are very good at pointing out, do as I say, not as I do. As much as parents like to say that, it's not the most effective parenting strategy in the world. So very important to parents to model, no matter how old their kids are or what decisions they want to make.
Great, thanks, Nick. And I really enjoyed that part that you mentioned of really finding maybe something outside of gaming that kind of scratches that itch, as you say, like something that they're looking for, that they enjoy, what they get out of the game, and maybe like try to dig a little bit deeper into, you know, why your child plays that particular type of game. I think that's a great way to think about it and a great suggestion for parents. So thank you.
Thanks.
Zach, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. And Nick, yeah, like you just mentioned, there are so many ways to try to get your child off their devices and into other productive activities. But as we all know, sometimes when a kid doesn't want to do something, there's really no way you can get them to do what you want. And with that in mind, when all else fails, when you try all of those attempts you just mentioned to try to get your kid off the screens and nothing seems to work, what other options are there?
Yeah, so I think again, the answer is always contextual, right? So it always depends on how bad, or even if there is any, I guess, degrade in your child's behavior or ability to thrive in any way. So if they're, you know, playing video games a lot, but they're otherwise doing well in school and keeping up with friendships, maybe that's not as big of an issue to address there. But if it's really starting to affect your child's well-being, where they're not taking care of themselves, the hygiene is suffering, they're not brushing their teeth or showering, you see that they're not wanting to hang out with friends, or they're becoming depressed, then stepping in and saying, hey, maybe we can get you some help, whether that's individualized therapy, or if the stage has gotten that bad where maybe they need an inpatient facility, then having a talk with them about that and talking with a mental health professional that you trust to figure out the best way forward would be. But it all comes down to how badly is the issue affecting your child. That's the question to ask at the end of the day, the most important one.
All right, thank you for that answer, Nick. And as you can see, it really is more of a case-by-case basis for each scenario. And I guess the big takeaway on that is it doesn't really only fall on the parents to help their child. There are many other outlets to get your kids off those screens if, like you said, they're facing negative consequences as a result from their usage. So that's all the questions we have for you today, Nick. Thank you so much again for joining us on the show today. And I just want to mention again, the link to Nick's piece is included in the description down below. I highly recommend, once again, that you check it out and read that. And that's all I have for today. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Nick, again. And everyone who's watching, thank you. And we are looking forward to getting another video out to you shortly. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Great,
Thanks for
thank
having
you.
me again.
All right, take care.